firing hand cannons at monstrous beasts, zipping out of harm's way at a moment's notice, and littering ancient ruins with bullet casings, Konami's Gungage blends that distinctive late 90s brand of arcade shooting with a heavy dose of sci-fi fantasy resembling that of Elemental Gearbolt crossed with Crisis City, due in part to its multiple characters, interconnecting storylines, and its relentless high-speed firefights. However, where Crisis City specializes in B-movie schlock, Gungage elevates the formula, delivering a more refined and palatable action-packed shooter. Developed by Konami's K-Set division, known for such classics as Symphony of the Night and Silent Hill 2, Gungage, while bountiful with action, is pretty light on story, almost laughably so, with little more given beyond a brief introduction that quickly references the rise of the Dark Moon realm and the sudden appearances of ancient ruins teeming with monstrous creatures. And with a choice of 4 characters, you're thrust into this chaotic world to unravel the mysteries of the Dark Moon realm and uncover who might be behind its awakening. Lackluster story aside, Gungage excels in just about every other aspect, showcasing its polished and straightforward gameplay that truly highlights the game's solid craftsmanship. For example, in 2025, it's difficult to recommend any game that employs tank controls, but Gungage defies expectations and somehow manages to pull them off with a somewhat effervescent smoothness that not many games of the era, let alone a fast-paced shooter, can match. One could speculate this game was developed with the analog stick in mind, as the forward and back movement, combined with the left and right aiming, feels intuitive, and with strafing mapped to the shoulder buttons, making quick work of enemies and staying out of the line of fire isn't as tenuous as one might assume. However, what really pulls it all together and makes the arcade control scheme work in your favor is the pivotal lock-on feature. While not as responsive as Sin and Punishment's auto-lock, as you still have to do a bit of legwork by lining up your crosshairs with your target before it tracks them, it's still an effective tool that allows you to shift your focus to sidestepping danger, which is easily done by double-tapping your strafe buttons, which allow your character to quickly dodge in the heat of battle. Add to it your ability to jump, which again isn't as stiff as you'd think, and a dash of classic circle strafing, and you can ensure you're well equipped to stay agile and hold your ground while trading bullets. That said, the one drawback to the controls is the slow turning speed. While not typically an issue, it becomes noticeable in the train level, where threats come at you from both sides and quickly turning around to snipe an enemy can be a struggle. Lastly, holding L2 allows for free aiming, which really only comes in handy when trying to shoot enemies slightly above your lock-on range or for shooting objects like power-up boxes that you don't auto-lock to. However, since activating this mode stops your movement and leaves you vulnerable to attacks, its practical use is limited and situational at best. With the seamless blend of combat and controls, the armed clashes unfolding at your fingertips are downright exhilarating, especially with the game's diverse locales and creatures that dwell within. Whether you're taking down mechs in experimental government facilities, tearing through ghost towns run amok with sand sharks, or destroying sentient monoliths among aquatic edifices, Gungage masterfully captures an inspired visage of eye-catching sci-fi fantasy that still shines through the low-poly framework of the PS1. Pop-in and fog withstanding, the varied environments, excellent character design, and conspicuous enemies more than make up for these small shortcomings. While not the most ambitious game on the system, Gungage makes an effort to stand out with levels that feel slightly more open-ended than others in the genre, with the occasional branching path or secret area. The best example being this base level, where you can find 4 switches to open one door or take an alternate route and open a different door. Depending on your choice, you'll end up fighting the boss either from the floor or from the balcony. Or how about the tank boss, which occurs at sunset in one character's story, but in another's, it's done completely with night vision. It's these small, thoughtful details that truly set this game apart from its peers. With bosses in mind, each encounter delivers an impressive spectacle, capping off each level with an exhilarating challenge that demands swift movement and well-timed shots. Notable highlights include the gargantuan hammerhead stalking your train ride into Black Mesa, the duo of bestial dogs that you have to outmaneuver as they rush across their ancient cathedral, and the sheer magnitude of the astonishing final boss. Without a doubt, what's here is sure to impress. And as enthralling as the action is, much of its flair can be credited to the excellent music that accompanies each level. This should come as no surprise, considering Castlevania veteran Michiru Yamane contributed to the soundtrack, infusing a handful of tunes with her signature touch that adds an extra layer of intensity and energy that truly amplifies the excitement. And I did mention that this game has multiple characters, which you can unlock via specific requirements. Beyond having unique specials and attacks that are a real treat to experience, your choice of character also affects the stage order and slightly remixes certain sections, which is an excellent way to keep the game fresh and incentivize subsequent playthroughs. Looping back to the topic of thoughtful details, I love how the designers customized the health pickups for each character, like how wackles are potions and pork chops, while stayers are ramen bowls and sandwiches. And I couldn't help but laugh at the tech-based level, where the posters go from awesome mechs, cool action movie poster, to hey, we got sexy ladies in bikinis. With its refined controls, inventive sci-fi flourishes, and engaging combat strewn throughout visually interesting and well-paced levels, Konami's Gungage stands tall amongst the ilk of other third-person shooters of the time with its pick-up-and-play arcade action that has aged pretty well considering the odds stacked against it. Now, I won't pretend the game is perfect, as even if I feel the controls are slicker than many of its contemporaries, they still fall short at times, but never enough to really get in the way of the action at hand. And those of you timid about the tank controls, the game does have remapping. And when stacked against other 3D shooters I've covered, like Crisis City and Love and Destroy, I personally think it bests both of them, landing it closer in scope to Sin and Punishment. If you're looking to scoop up a copy of your own, do be aware that it runs a bit on the higher side, seeing as it only released in Japan and Europe. However, that does mean it's fully playable in English if you can manage a PAL copy. That said, since the story isn't a major highlight, don't hesitate to go for the more affordable Japanese version to get your fix of arcade action. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this episode, consider checking out these other videos right here, or even subscribing. Also, if you'd like to throw me a couple of bucks, you can support the show on Patreon.